Okay, welcome everyone. We're looking at some really potent ideas today. Wisdom from an ancient tradition captured in a book that's really changed things for a lot of people.
It absolutely has. It gives you this framework, really, for understanding the things that shape us unconsciously. And crucially, a pretty clear path to, well, finding more freedom and joy in life.
Right. And what we want to do is get right into the core ideas, the really practical stuff you can actually use, maybe even starting today.
Definitely. And it kicks off with this concept called the dream of the planet.
The dream of the planet. Okay.
Yeah, think of it as the big collective reality. Society's rules, beliefs, culture, laws, religion, everything we're sort of born into and accept as normal. It's this huge story we all implicitly agree to.
And we get plugged into that dream through something called domestication.
Exactly. And that word domestication, it's chosen carefully. It's like training an animal, but for humans. It starts right from childhood. Parents, schools, society, they use rewards and punishments.
Ah, the classic carrot and stick.
Pretty much. You get approval, attention, rewards for fitting in, for following the rules of the dream, and you get disapproval, maybe shame, punishment when you step out of line.
And when you're a kid, you don't really question it, do you? You just agree. You need that acceptance, that safety.
You have no choice, really. So you absorb all these beliefs, these rules about how things are, how you should be, even if deep down they don't feel right or they go against who you really are.
And that external process builds a whole internal system,
A very powerful one.
starting with all those rules becoming internalized.
Yes. That becomes your personal book of law. It's like your internal rule book, your unique set of beliefs that governs your own personal reality, your personal dream.
And then comes the voice in your head.
The inner judge, yeah. This is the part of you that's constantly watching, constantly evaluating everything you think, feel, and do.
Constantly comparing it against that book of law.
Exactly. Always finding fault, looking for where you messed up, where you're not good enough according to those internalized rules.
And it's not just judging, it's handing down sentences.
It is. And that creates the next part. The victim.
The part that feels the punishment.
The part that carries all the guilt, the shame, the self-blame that the judge delivers. It's the suffering part of the equation.
This whole setup, judge and victim, based on the book of law, it leads to a really striking idea about why we suffer so much.
True injustice. That's
Yeah.
what they call it. The idea is that humans are maybe the only creatures who pay for the same mistake thousands of times.
1,000 times. Wow.
Yeah, because we have memory, right? And we have this judge. So you make a mistake once, but the judge brings it up again and again, finds you guilty repeatedly, and the victim feels that same pain over and over.
Instead of just experiencing the consequence once, learning and moving on.
Which would be true justice. Pay once, learn the lesson, but we keep punishing ourselves.
That really lands that feeling of being stuck in a loop of self-criticism.
It does, and all this internal noise, the conflicting rules, the judgments, the fears, the agreements we didn't even know we made it, creates this mental chaos.
Mitote.
The mitote, or sometimes Maya, it's like 100 voices shouting in your head at once. A thick fog of conflicting thoughts, worries, opinions.
Makes it hard to think clearly or hear your own intuition.
Almost impossible, just constant mental static.
So you've got the external dream, the domestication, then the internal book of law, the judge, the victim, and this chaotic mitote. What's the end result of all that?
Well, it adds up to what the material calls the dream of hell.
Not a place, but a state of being.
Exactly. A state of fear, suffering, guilt, anger, jealousy, constant internal war, really. And we project that war onto our lives and relationships. It's the suffering that comes from living unconsciously under all those old fear-based agreements.
Okay, that paints a very clear picture of the problem. But thankfully, there's a proposed way out.
There is. And that's where the 4 agreements come into play. They're presented as these incredibly practical tools drawn from Toltec wisdom, designed to help you consciously rewrite your internal reality.
So their purpose is to help you break free from those limiting agreements you picked up during domestication.
Precisely, to step out of that dream of hell and consciously create a new dream, sometimes called heaven on earth.
Heaven on earth meaning a personal reality based on what?
Based on freedom, joy, love, peace.
Yeah.
Genuine happiness. It's about waking up from the collective nightmare, in a sense, and creating your own reality intentionally.
A major internal shift. So let's get into the agreements themselves. The first one is called the most important, the foundation.
Yes. Be impeccable with your word.
Okay, your word. Why is the word seen as so powerful, more powerful than anything else?
Because your word creates. It's how you manifest your reality, how you express yourself, how you interact with the world. It's described as this incredible power, almost like magic. Yeah, they talk about white magic and black magic. Using your word for truth and love, that's white magic. Using it to spread fear, judgment, lies, that's black magic. Every single thought, every opinion, every judgment is using this power.
So being impeccable with that power, what does that actually mean?
Impeccable literally translates to without sin.
And sin in this context isn't religious dogma, right?
Not at all. Sin here is defined very specifically. Anything you do that goes against yourself.
So being impeccable with your word means not using your words against yourself.
Exactly, which immediately targets self-judgment, self-criticism, listening to that inner judge, all the ways we use our internal dialogue to beat ourselves up.
Which leads to the idea that self-rejection is the biggest sin.
It is. It's the ultimate way to use your word against yourself, to agree with all the negative programming. So impeccability is about using your word with integrity. Speaking truth, yes, but directing that power towards truth and love for yourself and for others.
Taking responsibility without the self-blame.
Yes. And it also applies externally. The misuse of the word, the black magic, isn't just internal self-talk.
Right. Using words against others.
Like lying, blaming, and especially gossip. The material is really strong on gossip.
Calling it the worst kind.
The worst form of black magic, yeah. Because it's like spreading emotional poison. You take fear-based beliefs and negativity and inject them into other people, creating more suffering, more conflict. It's like a virus.
Gossip as emotional poison. That's a powerful image. And the practical outcome of working on this first agreement.
Well, there's a direct link.
Right.
You can measure the impeccability of your word by your level of self-love.
Interesting.
When you stop weaponizing your words against yourself, when you start using them internally and externally for truth and kindness, your self-love naturally grows. Self-respect increases. Inner peace deepens. That mental noise, the mitote, starts to quiet down.
So using your word impeccably is actually an act of self-love. It's not just about how you talk to others, but maybe even more about how you talk to yourself.
Absolutely fundamental. And that flows right into the second agreement. They say it's kind of born from the first.
Which is, don't take anything personally.
And the core idea is so simple, but wow, is it hard to practice sometimes?
Which is...
Nothing other people do is because of you, it is because of themselves.
Okay, unpack that. If someone insults me or treats me badly, that's not about me.
According to this framework, no. Their actions, words, opinions, even their moods, they're all projections of their reality, their own personal dream, filtered through their book of law, their judge, their victim.
Everyone's living in their own movie, basically.
Exactly. So what they say or do reflects their movie, their programming, not objective reality about you.
So why do we take things so personally all the time?
It comes down to what the material calls personal importance. This feeling that everything revolves around me.
Like we're the main character in everyone else's story, too.
Kind of, yeah. They call it the maximum expression of selfishness, which sounds harsh, but it means we mistakenly assume others' actions are primarily directed at us or are accurate statements about us. We agree with their projection.
And when we agree, when we take it personally, what happens?
You make yourself vulnerable. You essentially invite their emotional poison, their emotional garbage into your own system.
You let it in.
You agree with it. And that immediately triggers your own judge and victim. You feel hurt, offended, defensive. You get sucked into their drama, and you create your own internal drama. Plus, it makes you easy to manipulate. If someone knows you take things personally, they can push your buttons with criticism or flattery.
So the huge benefit of dropping this habit is?
You develop immunity to emotional poison. Their stuff just doesn't land, it doesn't stick, because you know it's about them. A huge amount of freedom, yeah. Negative emotions like anger, jealousy, envy, even sadness, they lose their grip because you're not feeding them by internalizing other people's projections. You can respond with clarity from your own center instead of just reacting out of hurt.
The key insight there is seeing others' behavior as a reflection of their world, not a verdict on yours.
That's it, which connects nicely to the third agreement. Don't make assumptions.
Yeah, this feels very linked to that mental fog, the mitote.
It absolutely is. We make assumptions because our minds crave explanations. We need things to make sense. So when there's a gap in information,
We just fill it in ourselves.
we fill it in. But we fill it based on our own fears, our own book of law, our past experiences, our existing agreements. We invent reasons, motives, intentions. It's tied directly to overthinking.
And this is where so much misunderstanding and conflict comes from, right?
The primary cause, according to the material. Misunderstandings, unnecessary drama, sadness, conflict, especially in relationships. We cook up these elaborate stories about why someone did something, what they really meant, what they're thinking.
And then we react to the story we invented.
As if it's the absolute truth. Creating, as they say, a whole big drama for nothing, all based on imagination fueled by fear.
The solution seems obvious, but maybe not easy in the moment.
It takes courage. The courage to ask questions, the courage to communicate clearly.
Instead of guessing.
Exactly. Just ask, find out. It's always better to know the reality, even if it's uncomfortable, than to suffer based on a fiction you created in your head. Ask for what you want. Say what you mean. Give people the chance to say yes or no.
And the benefit of breaking this habit.
It creates immunity in the interaction that you have with yourself. Think about all the internal arguments you have based on assumptions.
Yeah, true.
When you stop assuming, a lot of that internal conflict just dissolves. You start dealing with what is, not what you imagine. And externally, clear communication, it transforms relationships, builds trust, cuts down confusion and conflict massively.
Okay, so the nugget here is that most drama, internal and external, comes from stories we invent to fill information gaps. The antidote is the courage to just ask and communicate clearly.
Spot on. And that brings us to the fourth agreement, which is a bit different. It's the one that makes the other three actually happen.
Always do your best.
This is the action agreement. It's about doing the first three. It's the practice. It's how being impeccable, not taking things personally, and not assuming become real ingrained habits, not just nice ideas.
And that phrase, your best?
Yeah.
It's not about perfectionism, is it?
Absolutely not. This is crucial. Your best isn't a fixed target. It changes all the time.
Moment to moment.
Moment to moment, day to day. Your best when you're healthy and rested is different from your best when you're sick or stressed or exhausted. The principle is simply, do your best given the circumstances you are in right now.
So it's about the effort, the intention in this present moment.
Yes, putting your full, appropriate effort into the action itself. Doing things because you choose to, because it aligns with these agreements, not just chasing a reward or outcome. Consistency is key here. Doing your best consistently, even if best feels small some days, is way more powerful than occasional heroic efforts followed by burnout.
And there's a warning about pushing too hard, trying to do more than your best.
Right. Doing less than your best opens the door to self-judgment, regret. But trying to do more than your current best, that just burns you out. It depletes your energy, makes you frustrated, and actually hinders progress in the long run. Find the sustainable effort for now.
This agreement feels like the ultimate weapon against the inner judge.
It really is. It's the perfect answer. The judge is always looking for flaws, for where you fell short. But if you can genuinely look back at a situation and say, you know what, given how I felt, given what was happening, I honestly did my best.
A judge has nothing to say.
Exactly. The accusation loses its power. It breaks that cycle of guilt and regret and self-punishment. It gives you peace, regardless of how things turned out.
I did my best. That's a powerful defense. But actually living these 4 agreements consistently?
Yeah.
That sounds really hard with all our old programming.
It is hard. It takes real commitment, real courage, real discipline. That's where the idea of being a warrior comes in.
A spiritual warrior.
Yeah, not fighting other people, but fighting that internal parasite, the judge, the victim, the old book of law that keeps trying to run the show.
Yeah.
It's an internal battle for your own freedom.
And you're going to slip up. You're going to break the agreement sometime.
Oh, absolutely. It's inevitable. We're reprogramming decades of conditioning.
So what's the guidance for when that happens?
Crucially, don't judge yourself for it. Don't let the judge use it as ammunition. The moment you realize you've broken an agreement, forgive yourself. Instantly.
No self-punishment.
None. Just acknowledge it, forgive yourself, stand up, make the agreement again right now, and commit to doing your best from this moment forward. It's a practice of continuous recommitment, not about achieving perfection.
So putting it all together, actually living this, that's the ongoing work.
It really is. It needs conscious attention, consistent practice. It's not like you read the book and you're done. It's an active daily process of transforming your personal dream.
How do people actually make that happen day to day?
Well, awareness is the absolute foundation. You have to start noticing your thoughts, your words, the assumptions popping up, your emotional reaction.
Just observing without judgment.
That's the goal. Maybe keeping a journal, maybe just taking moments to reflect, then actively challenging those old fear-based agreements when you spot them, and consciously choosing to apply the new ones instead.
Like having reminders.
Yeah. Maybe write the agreements down, put them where you see them. Set an intention in the morning. Review your day briefly in the evening. How was my word? Did I take things personally? Did I assume? Did I do my best? Monitor your internal chat. Choose truthful, kind words for yourself. Ask questions. Don't gossip. Detach from others' opinions. It's active practice.
And forgiveness came up again as really central.
It's absolutely key. For healing those old emotional wounds from the domestication process, from living under the tyranny of the judge, it's how you stop rejecting yourself.
Forgiving others and forgiving yourself.
Yes. Forgiving others is often more about freeing yourself from the resentment, the emotional poison. But forgiving yourself is paramount. For every time you used your word against yourself, took things personally, assumed, judged, didn't do your best, true forgiveness means the memory is still there, but the emotional charge is gone. It doesn't hurt anymore.
And the result of all this sustained effort, this practice, this new dream, what does it actually feel like?
It feels like freedom. Personal freedom. Freedom from the constant noise of the judge and victim. From the mitote. It's a baseline of inner peace, self-acceptance, real self-love, genuine happiness that isn't dependent on external circumstances. The ability to love unconditionally. You're not living by the old rules anymore. You're creating your own reality based on love and truth. It's that heaven on earth created within you.
That sounds incredibly transformative. And presumably, this doesn't just stay internal. It affects everything.
It ripples out into everything. Relationships change dramatically. Communication becomes clearer. Trust deepens. Conflict and drama just fade away. Whether it's at work, with family, anywhere you interact with people, these agreements foster integrity, resilience, authenticity.
Now, we should probably acknowledge some critiques mention that the simplicity can feel, well, simplistic when faced with really complex, painful life situations.
That's a fair point. Life throws incredibly difficult things at us. Applying "don't take anything personally" in a situation of, say, genuine harm or injustice needs nuance. It's about reclaiming your internal state from being defined by the other person's actions, not about denying the harm or failing to set boundaries or seek justice. The agreements are powerful tools, but wisdom and context are always needed in how you apply them.
Which really underscores that it's an ongoing practice, isn't it? Not a final destination you reach.
Exactly. Living consciously, maintaining this new dream, recommitting every day to doing your best. It's a continuous journey. It takes awareness, courage, and that willingness to just dust yourself off and try again when you stumble.
So thinking about that first agreement of the power of your word as our primary creative tool, and the fourth, always doing your best is the way to apply it. Maybe the question to leave with is, what's the one most important agreement you could make with yourself using your word impeccably right now to start shifting your reality? Something to think about today.